Of the fallout from the 2020 election, several organizations have attempted to shore up confidence in our elections, including Keep Our Republic, which features a former congressman from Northeast Wisconsin on its advisory board. And we welcome in Reid Ribble, of course, a familiar face, the former three-term Republican congressman from the 8th District. We have spoken with you on this program many times about the two organizations you've been involved with here over the last few years. Let's start with Keep Our Republic, that organization dedicating to protecting elections from threats. You've tried to do a lot of education with voters about the integrity of elections, what's safe, what's not. Do you feel that work has been successful as we are less than 24 hours away from all this wrapping up?
I think so, and I think it's reflective. And listen, it's not just us; it's a bunch of organizations. But I think it's reflective in the fact that so many people are engaging in the election this year and have voted early already.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're talking about across the country, millions and millions of people have voted early. I think that level of enthusiasm also reflects a level of trust in the results, and that's at least what we're hopeful for.
It also reflects, Reid, doesn't it, a change in philosophy for your party to engage people in getting out the vote early. It's not something that's been embraced by Republicans. They said they would. There's been a bit of a mixed message at times from the top of the ticket, but for the most part, they've really encouraged people to do it. Should that take away some of the stuff post-election about concerns over how it's counted and things like that?
Well, I certainly hope so. I think what you're seeing is a bit of an evolution within the GOP nationally and here in Wisconsin, where they recognize that during COVID they got outmaneuvered, and they don't want that to happen again. And so they're now really encouraging people to vote whatever way makes it most convenient for them to actually vote. And you also don't hear much in Wisconsin about how the election is going to be stolen, because that suppresses votes. If you think your election is going to be, if you think your vote's going to be stolen from you, why would you vote at all?
Right. Let's talk about Democracy First. That is the organization that wants politicians to accept election results, to sign a pledge that says, yes, I will accept the election results. 70 Wisconsinites, now they don't all serve in Wisconsin, but they have ties to Wisconsin, have signed that pledge to accept those results this November. Are you pleased with that number, and if so, why?
Yeah, we're pleased with it. I certainly wish there had been more Republicans that would have signed on, but I'm happy with those that did. And I'm happy with the number that did. Obviously, we'd like everybody to sign on. It's not a difficult thing to do, to just say, listen, I'm willing to accept the results and the decision of the American people in this election, and I'll support their decision.
All right, you mentioned that you would have liked to see more Republicans. What should voters make of the fact, if anything, of the fact that Eric Hovde, the Republican candidate for Senate, did not sign this? The two candidates running for your old seat here in the 8th, the Democrat Kristen Lyerly and Republican Tony Weed, also did not sign this. Should we make anything of that?
I'm not sure whether you should make anything of it or not. I think what'll be most telling is what happens after the election.
Okay.
And so I think that's what we have to watch.
All right, let's talk about your old seat, the 8th. We have talked about this early on in the race. When it all started, you told us that you thought Kristen Lyerly was a strong candidate for the Democrats, that the GOP candidates would have to align themselves with Donald Trump in the primary, but not necessarily in the general election. We certainly have seen that with Tony Weed, at least in his ads. Now in the general election, his ads don't make any mention of Donald Trump. How do you think this race has played out?
I think it's played out exactly the way I described it would back the last time we spoke. On the right, the nominee, Tony Weed, was going to have to basically lean into his Trump endorsement to win the primary, and he did that and was successful in winning that nomination. And then he has to run from that endorsement during the general election, so he doesn't turn off independents and predominantly female voters who aren't all that enamored with Donald Trump. And I think he's mostly done that, and I would expect Tony Weed to win tomorrow.
Do you expect that to be a wide margin or a closer margin than we've seen here in recent years? It's been a while since a Democrat won it. You were the one to unseat a Democrat back in 2010.
Yeah. I think it'll be closer than the Gallagher races were, in part because we're in a little different time, but also I think Dr. Lyerly was an extraordinarily strong candidate, or is an extraordinarily strong candidate. She's a good communicator. She's really stayed on message well, and she's done something that a Democrat has not been able to do in the 8th District, and that was raise enough money to get her message out.
Reid, she raised a lot of money, but by all accounts, there hasn't been a lot of outside money coming in. Does that reflect the fact that nationally, at least those organizations don't think this will be that competitive?
That's correct. The national organizations, they're doing their own polling, maybe even more polling than what the candidates themselves do. They're seeing it, and those numbers are reflective in the fact that they don't believe that putting a bunch of outside money necessarily is going to move the needle much in Wisconsin 8.
All right, let's see when you think the needle will finally peg at a stop here in Wisconsin for the election. We all anticipate at least coming into Wednesday before we know who wins the race for the White House in Wisconsin. What do you think in terms of when that will end?
Right. For the White House, I think it's possible that the Hovde race for Senate and the race for president will come later, possibly Wednesday night. However, I think the congressional races will probably be wound up by 10 p.m. and the state assembly and state senate races, for the most part, will be wound up pretty early in the evening.
Reid, it's great to see you again. Thanks so much for your insight. We really appreciate it.
Always good to be with you, Chris.